My father struck me in front of our entire extended family when I refused to move to the basement so my pregnant sister and her unemployed husband could have my room. They didn't know I've been paying the mortgage and all utilities for years. 3 days later, they learned what happens when the money stops flowing. The hum of my computer was the only sound that made sense anymore. It was a clean, consistent thrum, the sound of logic and order of ones and zeros building worlds inside a glowing screen. Here in my childhood bedroom turned remote office, I was a creator, a problem solver. I was a senior software developer at 22, the kind of success story my parents liked to mention in passing to their friends. But outside this door, the code got messy. The logic broke down. Outside this door, I was just Ethan, the reliable younger son, the human ATM, the silent pillar holding up a house that was quietly crumbling. The door creaked open and the scent of pot roast and anxiety wafted in. It was my mother, Sharon, holding a plate with a slice of apple pie. Her smile was warm, practiced, the kind she wore when she was about to ask for something. "You work so hard, sweetie," she said, setting the plate down on the corner of my desk dangerously close to a stack of technical manuals. "I don't know how you stare at that screen all day." "It's how the sausage gets made, Mom," I said, offering a tired smile back. "I've been debugging a critical flaw for the last 6 hours and my brain felt like scrambled eggs." She smoothed my hair back. A gesture left over from my childhood that now felt more like a prelude. "We're so proud of you. You know that, right?" "I know, Mom." She let her hand linger on my shoulder. "Listen, honey. I know it's a bad time, but I was just going over the grocery receipts and things are just so much more expensive this month. I'm short about $200 for the big shop this weekend." I didn't look at her. I just kept my eyes on the screen, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I knew for a fact she'd just done a big shop 3 days ago. I've seen the bags. I also knew my father, Mark, had been talking about getting a new set of golf clubs. I didn't say any of that. I just nodded, pulled my phone from its stand and opened my banking app. "No problem," I murmured, my thumb tapping the screen. "I'll send it over." "Oh, you're a lifesaver," she sighed. The relief in her voice immediate and total. She leaned in and kissed my temple. "It's just what family does. We support each other." She picked up the empty coffee mug from my desk. "I'll get you a fresh cup." As she left, her signature phrase hung in the air. "It's just what family does." It was the justification for everything. It was the reason half the mortgage payment for this house, a house I wasn't even on the deed for, was set to auto-pay for my account every month. It was the reason the electricity bill, the high-speed internet bill that was the lifeblood of my career, and the water bill were all in my name, paid by me in full. It was the reason I drained a significant chunk of my savings last winter to fix the leaky roof after a storm. Listening to my dad talk about how contractors were thieves while I quietly signed the check. It was the reason I'd co-sign for my mom's car, and when the payments became a little tight I'd just taken them over completely. I leaned back the springs of my chair groaning in protest. I justified it all with a simple dangerous thought. It keeps the peace. My dad was proud, a man who couldn't stand the idea of being seen as failing. My mom was fragile, always worried about appearances. My contributions allowed them to maintain the facade of a comfortable, stable middle-class life. It was my secret gift to them. A gift they never acknowledged and I never mentioned. The front door slammed shut, followed by the heavy tread of boots on the hardwood floor. A moment later, my door was pushed open without a knock. It was Sarah, my older sister, 25 years old and radiating the unearned confidence of someone who had never truly faced a consequence. Behind her trailed her husband Mike, a lanky guy with perpetually worried eyes who seemed to shrink a little more each day. Sarah leaned against the doorframe, a smirk playing on her lips. "Still saving the world with computer magic?" "Just paying the bills, Sarah," I said, my tone flatter than I intended. "Tough day," she sighed, running a hand through her perfectly styled hair. "Mike had a great interview with that logistics company. Nailed it. But the manager was a total jerk. Had it out for him from the start." Mike stood awkwardly behind her, his face flushed with embarrassment. It was the same story as last month, just with a different company name. Sarah was a master of spinning Mike's near misses into almost successes, forever painting him as the victim of a world that just didn't appreciate his potential. Sarah and Mike had been living with us for the past 6 months after losing their apartment when Mike got laid off from his previous job. What started as a temporary arrangement had become permanent, with my parents treating them more like honored guests than adults who needed to get back on their feet. She looked me up and down. "Hey, little brother. Let me borrow $50. Mike and I are going out tonight. Gotta celebrate our news." Sarah and Mike had been married for 8 months, and the news was that she was pregnant. "Celebrate?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Or panic?" She scowled. "Hey, be cool. It's a good thing." She stepped into the room, her voice dropping. "Look, I'll pay you back when Mike gets on his feet." That was the oldest line in her book. A promise so worn and faded it was transparent. Sarah had always been good at making other people's problems sound like opportunities for me to help. But I saw the flicker of desperation in her eyes. The fear underneath the bravado. She was my sister. So I did what I always did. I pulled my worn leather wallet from my back pocket, took out 2 20s and a 10 and handed them over. Avoiding the fight was worth $50. Later that night, I was on a video call with Liam, my best friend since kindergarten. He was the only one who knew the full extent of my financial arrangement with my family. His face, pixelated on my monitor, was a mask of disbelief. "They're making you pay for the celebration of the baby that's going to make their financial situation even worse? Ethan, are you hearing yourself? You're not a son. You're a subsidiary. You're the R&D department and the entire revenue stream for a failing family business. It's not like that, I argued. The words tasting like ash in my mouth. I'm helping them out. They're in a tough spot. They've been in a tough spot since you got your signing bonus, Liam shot back, his voice rising. They see your paycheck as a family resource. Your dad gets new clubs, your mom gets her car, Sarah gets date night money, and you get to live in the same room you had when you were 15. It's a raw deal, man. When are you going to wake up and see it? I didn't have an answer for him. I just stared at my own reflection in the dark screen, a pale, tired face looking back at me. The wake-up call came a week later. My parents and Sarah were giddy with excitement over the wedding plans and the baby. The whole house buzzed with a frantic energy. During dinner, my father cleared his throat. A sound that always meant a proclamation was coming. He beamed at Sarah, then at me. You know, with the baby coming and Sarah and Mike starting their new life together, we're all gonna have to make some adjustments. Big changes are coming. He clapped a heavy proprietary hand on my shoulder. It's an exciting time, a time for family to really stick together. The word adjustments landed in the pit of my stomach like a stone. I looked at the smiling faces around the table. My father's proud bluster, my mother's teary-eyed joy, my sister's smug satisfaction, Mike's uncomfortable fidgeting. And for the first time, I didn't feel like part of the family. I felt like a resource about to be tapped. The family talk happened 2 days later. They sat me down in the living room on the floral sofa that had absorbed decades of unspoken tensions. My father took his usual armchair, the throne from which he issued his decrees. My mother perched on the edge of the ottoman, wringing her hands, felt less like a conversation and more like a sentencing. Sarah sat beside my mother, one hand resting protectively on her small bump, while Mike hovered uncomfortably by the window. Ethan, my father began, his voice imbued with a somber gravity. Your mother and I have been doing a lot of thinking about the future, about this family. He gestured expansively as if to encompass the very concept of kinship. Sarah and Mike need a proper start, a real bedroom to build their nest to welcome our grandchild. I stayed silent. My heart beginning to beat a little faster. I knew where this was going. So, he continued, leaning forward with a conspiratorial smile. We have a wonderful solution. It's a way for you to make a real meaningful contribution. We're going to move you down to the basement room. It's spacious and it will give the newlyweds the privacy and space they need in your old room. He said it all with such finality as if he were announcing I'd won an award. He wasn't asking. He was informing me of a decision that had already been made. The basement, I finally said, the words feeling foreign in my mouth. Dad, it's not finished. It's a concrete box. Don't be dramatic, he waved a dismissive hand. We'll throw a rug down, get you a nice lamp. It'll be cozy. A real bachelor pad. My mother chimed in, her voice soft and pleading. Think of it as your contribution to your new niece or nephew, sweetie. A sacrifice, yes, but a beautiful one for family. A sacrifice. They were asking me to move my entire life, my workspace, my sanctuary, the one place in this house that was truly mine, into a damp subterranean storage area, and they were calling it a beautiful sacrifice. Later, I went down to see it for myself. I pulled the old metal chain and a single naked 60-watt bulb cast long distorted shadows across the room. The air was thick with the smell of mildew and cold earth. A large, spidery water stain crept across the far wall, a ghostly map of last winter's flood. I could see the faint outlines of where my dad's old workout bench used to be, where my childhood bicycle had rusted. I ran a hand along the rough concrete wall. It was cold and slightly damp to the touch. A dead cricket lay curled on the floor near the ancient groaning furnace. This wasn't a bachelor pad. It was a tomb, and they wanted to put me in it. The next day I tried to reason with them again. I approached them in the kitchen while my mom was making coffee. Look, I started trying to keep my voice even and logical. I understand you want to help Sarah. I want to help her too, but I can't work in the basement. My job requires a stable, secure, dry environment for thousands of dollars of computer equipment. I have multiple monitors, servers. I need the dedicated electrical circuits and the hardwired Ethernet connection in my room. The Wi-Fi doesn't even reach the basement. My father, reading the sports page at the table, didn't even look up. You'll figure it out. You're the smart one. This isn't about being smart, Dad. It's about logistics. My job, the job that pays for the high-speed internet you want me to move away from, depends on the setup. Oh, Ethan, don't make this so difficult. My mother sighed, turning from the counter. Her face was a mask of weary disappointment. You're making this all about you. Just think of the baby. Your sister needs this. Your sister needs this. The 4 words that had governed my entire life. Sarah needed a new bike, so mine got handed down. Sarah needed tutoring, so my allowance was cut to pay for it. Sarah needed, and Ethan provided. Only this time what she needed was my dignity. That evening, I overheard Sarah and Mike talking in the hallway. I was heading to the kitchen for a glass of water and froze when I heard their hushed voices. I don't know, Sarah, Mike was saying, his voice unusually hesitant. It feels kind of wrong. This is his room, you know? He works in there. Babe, be realistic. Sarah's voice was sharp, pragmatic. We need the space. We're having a baby. What are we supposed to do, live in the basement? He's a single guy, he can manage. He's smart. He'll figure it out. Don't be soft about this. We need to think about our family now. He was quiet for a moment. Yeah, you're right. Hearing it from her so stark and unapologetic solidified something in me. I wasn't family to them. I was an obstacle, a resource to be utilized. And my sister, the person who should have been my ally, was treating me like an inconvenience while my brother-in-law, despite his reservations, was too weak to stand up for me when it mattered. The next day, my phone buzzed. It was my Aunt Carol, my dad's younger sister. She was the black sheep of the family, the one who'd moved out of state and valued honesty over appearances. I heard the news, she said, her voice dry. Your father called to tell me about Sarah's baby and the wonderful new living arrangements. I just sighed. Yeah. Ethan, she said, and her tone softened. I'm just going to say this once, you have always been a good boy, a good son, a good brother, but sometimes being too good lets people forget your worth. They start to see your kindness not as a gift but as an expectation. Don't let them erase you. Her words landed like a depth charge, sending ripples through years of conditioned compliance. Don't let them erase you. It was exactly what they were trying to do. Erase my needs, my space, my contributions until all that was left was my function. That evening, the email invitation arrived for the annual Miller family reunion and barbecue. My dad cornered me by the stairs. Hey champ, he said, slapping my back a little too hard. At the reunion I'm going to share the happy news with everyone about you helping out your sister. It'll be great. Show the whole family how we stick together. That was it. The point of no return. He was going to turn my humiliation into a public performance of his own magnanimity. He was going to use me as a prop in his play of the benevolent patriarch. A cold, hard resolve settled in my chest. It wasn't hot and angry, but chillingly clear. I went to my room and closed the door. I wouldn't argue with him again in private. I wouldn't plead my case. If he wanted to make it public, then my answer would be public too. I sat down at my desk, the hum of the computer a comforting presence. I opened my online banking portal. Methodically, I went back month by month, year by year. I took a screenshot of every mortgage payment transfer labeled Miller Mortgage. I took a screenshot of every utility payment to the city power and water department. I found the email invoice for the $8,000 roof repair. I found the digital records for the car payments. I saved each one to a secure folder on my phone, not out of spite, but for my own sanity. It was proof. Proof that I wasn't crazy. Proof that my contributions were real. Proof that I had a right to say no. I was no longer just reacting. I was preparing. He wanted to make a public announcement. Fine. I'd have a public response ready. The day of the reunion dawned bright and oppressively cheerful. Our backyard, normally a quiet patch of green, was transformed into a stage for the perfect family play. The air was thick with the scent of charcoal and freshly cut grass. Uncles I saw once a year laughed too loudly while flipping burgers, their beer bottles sweating in the afternoon sun. Aunts cooed over Sarah's early pregnancy, offering unsolicited advice about everything from prenatal vitamins to baby names. Kids sticky with watermelon juice shrieked and chased each other around the lawn. It was a perfect portrait of American family bliss, and I felt like a ghost haunting the frame. I moved through the crowd, a can of Coke cold in my hand, offering tight smiles and non-committal answers. I could feel my father's eyes on me from across the yard. He was in his element, holding court by the big new grill he bought last month. A purchase I suspected was funded by the money I'd given my mom for property taxes. I found a spot near the old oak tree, nursing my drink, watching the performance. Sarah was playing the part of the expectant mother beautifully. One hand resting protectively on her barely visible bump, accepting congratulations with a look of glowing pride, while Mike stood awkwardly beside her, accepting congratulations for something he seemed uncomfortable claiming credit for. My mother fluttered between groups, a hummingbird of social grace, ensuring everyone's plate was full and their glass was topped off. Then my father clinked a knife against his beer bottle. The sound cut through the cheerful din. Hey, everyone. Can I have your attention for a minute? Conversations trickled to a stop. Heads turned. This was his moment. He put his arm around my mother and pulled her close. As you all know, we have some wonderful news in the Miller family. My daughter, Sarah, and her husband Mike are going to be parents. A smattering of applause and whoops went through the yard. He let it die down, his grin widening. And in times like these, a family shows its true strength. It shows how we pull together, how we support our own. He scanned the crowd until his eyes locked with mine. He gestured towards me with his bottle. And I have never been prouder of my son, Ethan. To help his sister and Mike get the best possible start, Ethan has graciously and with a full heart offered to give them his bedroom, and he'll be making a new space for himself in the basement. He looked at me, a king expecting a bow from a loyal subject. That's the kind of man he is. That's the kind of family we are. Let's hear it for Ethan. A few people started to clap, looks of admiration on their faces. Sarah was beaming. My mother was dabbing her eyes. A strange calm washed over me. The background noise of the party faded into a dull roar. Felt like I was watching a movie of my own life. I took a slow breath. Actually, Dad, I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it was clear and steady, and it carried across the suddenly silent yard. I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. The clapping faltered and stopped. Every eye was on me now. My father's smile froze on his face. I won't be giving up my room, I finished, my gaze locked on his. The silence that followed was heavy, absolute. The only sound was the sizzle of burgers on the grill. My father's face, which had been beaming with pride, slowly began to darken, the color rising from his neck. What did you just say? He asked, his voice low and dangerous. Sarah took a step forward, her face a mask of disbelief. Ethan, what is your problem? We talked about this. It's just for a little while. My problem, Sarah, I said, turning to her, is that my room is also my office. It's the office where I do the job that pays for. I never got to finish the sentence. My father moved faster than I'd seen him move in years. He closed the distance between us in 3 long strides. Before I could even process it, his arm swung back. The crack of his open palm against my cheek was sharp and ugly like a branch snapping. The impact sent a shockwave through my jaw. My head whipped to the side. A collective gasp went through the crowd. For a heartbeat, the world was just the stinging heat on my face and a high-pitched ringing in my ears. I tasted the faint coppery tang of blood where my teeth had cut the inside of my cheek. My chest tightened as if someone had wrapped barbed wire around my lungs. I slowly turned my head back to face him. His chest was heaving. His eyes wild with a fury I'd never seen directed at me before. My mother let out a strangled sob. I touched my cheek. It was already starting to swell. I looked at my father, at the man who had just struck his son in front of 30 relatives for refusing to be rendered homeless in his own home. You hit me, I whispered the words barely audible, then a little louder, my voice shaking with a cold clear rage I didn't know I possessed. You hit me for a room. I took a step back, putting a little space between us. I looked past him at my mother's horrified face, at Sarah's shocked and suddenly guilty expression, at Mike who looked like he wanted to disappear entirely, at the stunned faces of my aunts and uncles. Let's talk about what I've paid for, I said, and my voice was strong now. I pulled out my phone. My hands were trembling, but my purpose was firm. I held it up. This family sticks together. This family supports its own. For the last 2 years, I have paid half of the mortgage on this house. Every single month, I swipe the screen. I pay for the electricity that is currently cooking those burgers. I pay for the high-speed internet everyone uses. When the roof was leaking last winter, it wasn't the insurance company that paid the $8,000 bill. It was me. I looked at my mother. The car you drove here today? I make the payments on that too. I lowered the phone, my voice dropping but losing none of its intensity. This room isn't a gift you can give away. It's the one thing in this entire house I haven't paid for yet. So don't you ever talk to me about sacrifice. The silence was absolute. My father stood frozen. His face a mottled canvas of red and white. His rage collapsed into stunned disbelief. My mother was openly weeping now, her hand over her mouth. Sarah looked like she was going to be sick. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Mike stood behind her, his face pale with shock and what looked like dawning understanding. Aunt Carol was the first to move. She walked straight to my side and put a hand on my arm. Come on, Ethan, she said softly. Let's go. I nodded, my eyes never leaving my father's. I let her guide me away. As I walked past my family, past the wreckage of the perfect picture they had tried to paint, I didn't feel triumph. I felt a vast hollow emptiness. Ethan, wait, my mother cried, her voice cracking. I didn't stop. I walked through the side gate, got into my car and shut the door. The sound of it closing was the most definitive sound I had ever heard. I turned the key, and as I pulled away from the curb, I saw my father standing on the lawn, a broken statue in the middle of his ruined party. The night was spent in a sterile, anonymous hotel room. The air conditioning was too cold. The sheets were too stiff, but it was quiet. For the first time in years, the only needs I had to consider were my own. I didn't answer the frantic barrage of calls and texts. Instead, I sat on the edge of the bed, the glow of my laptop illuminating my face, and I began to systematically dismantle the scaffold I had built around my family. It wasn't an act of rage. It was an act of consequence as calm and logical as debugging a line of code. I logged into my bank account, the automatic mortgage transfer to my father's account, cancelled. I logged into the city utility portal, the electricity, the water, the internet, all services I paid for were scheduled for disconnection due to non-payment. Effective immediately. The account for my mother's car payment. I changed the password and removed the autopay. Each click was a quiet snip, severing a wire of dependency. When I was done, I blocked all their numbers and powered off my phone. I needed silence. 3 days later, I drove back to the house. Liam came with me. A silent, steady presence I was deeply grateful for. I just needed to get my computer, my work equipment, and some clothes. The rest they could keep. The house was unnervingly quiet as we pulled up. No lights were on. Even though it was a gloomy, overcast afternoon, it looked vacant. My key still worked in the lock. We stepped inside into a dim, heavy silence. The air was stale and cool. The familiar hum of the refrigerator was gone. We found them in the living room sitting like ghosts in the gray afternoon light. My father was slumped in his armchair looking 10 years older. My mother sat on the sofa, her face puffy and stained with tears. They both looked up as I entered, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and desperation. Ethan, my mother whispered, standing up. Thank God. The power is out. The internet is gone. We got a letter, an urgent notice about the mortgage. I know, I said calmly. I stopped paying for them. My father finally stirred. You did this? He rasped. His voice a broken version of its usual booming authority. You'd let your own family sit in the dark? You slapped me in front of them, I replied. My voice devoid of heat. I think we have different definitions of family. That's when my mother broke. The facade of weary disappointment crumbled and raw, ugly desperation poured out. You don't understand, she sobbed, taking a step towards me. We needed that money. We had to have it. Needed it for what? I asked, the old bitterness flaring. New golf clubs? No, she cried. And the full truth, a torrent of shame held back for years, was finally unleashed for the other mortgage. The one we took out years ago for the credit cards. We're drowning, Ethan. We have been for years. Your money was the only thing keeping our heads above water. I didn't know what else to do. She collapsed back onto the sofa, her sobs shaking her whole body. The secret was out. This wasn't just about entitlement. It was about a deep rotting foundation of debt and shame they had hidden from everyone, including me. They hadn't just been using me for luxuries. They had been using me for survival, all while treating me like an inconvenience. Liam put a hand on my shoulder, a silent signal that he was ready to start moving my things. As he headed for the stairs, Sarah appeared in the hallway with Mike close behind her. She looked terrible. Her face was pale. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and the usual confident smirk was gone, replaced by a deep hollowed-out shame. Mike looked even worse, if that was possible. She stopped me before I could follow Liam. She didn't look at my parents. She just looked at me. Ethan, she said, her voice barely a whisper. I'm sorry. I waited, saying nothing. When Dad slapped you and you said all that stuff about the bills, she shook her head, struggling for words. I never knew. I took it all for granted. I thought Dad had it covered. Mike stepped forward, his voice shaking. I tried to tell her it wasn't right, taking your room. But He looked down at his hands. I was too much of a coward to speak up. I'm about to be a father and I couldn't even stand up for what's right. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. I've been so jealous of you, Ethan. You got this great job. You have your life together, and I'm pregnant and scared, and Mike can't find work, and I went along with it. It was easier than admitting we were failures. I am so sorry. It was the most honest thing I'd ever heard her say. In that moment, she wasn't the golden child. She was just a scared woman finally facing the truth about herself. My parents were now trying a different tactic, begging me to just turn the power back on so we could talk it through. My father even offered me a deal where I could keep my room if I just resumed the payments. I shook my head. I walked over to the coffee table and placed a business card on it. This is a non-profit credit counselor, I told them. They can help you consolidate your debt and make a realistic budget. That's your first step. Then I looked at Sarah and Mike. This is your wake-up call, I said. My voice firm but not unkind. Your child doesn't need you to be successful. They need you to be responsible adults. Step up. Stop letting them treat you like children and stop letting them use me as a bank. This is your family to provide for now. I turned and walked away, heading upstairs with Liam to pack the last of my life out of that house. The weeks that followed were a blur of apartment hunting and setting up a new life. I found a small one-bedroom place downtown with big windows and a view of the city. It was mine. Every square inch of it. The quiet was profound. It was the sound of peace. Aunt Carol became my anchor. She called every few days, not to gossip but just to check in. She told me my parents had finally called the credit counselor. They had to sell the house, my childhood home, and move into a small rental across town. The facade had finally irrevocably crumbled. About a month after I moved out, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It's Sarah. Mike got a job at a warehouse. Hard work but steady. I'm working part-time at a clinic. We're getting our own place before the baby comes. Thanks for the wake-up call. I stared at the message for a long time. I typed back a simple, "You're welcome. Good luck." It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a beginning. A new foundation built on the rubble of the old one. Sometimes I stand at my new window looking out at the city lights, and I think about them. I don't feel anger anymore or even triumph. I mostly feel a quiet sadness for the family I thought I had and a deep abiding gratitude for the peace I fought to find. I didn't destroy my family. I just stopped setting myself on fire to keep them warm. They had to learn to find their own light. It's amazing how clearly you can see your own value once you stop paying for others to ignore it. Have you ever had to choose between your family and your own self-respect? What would you have done?